Pathetic, the teacher scoffed, her voice slicing through the silent gym. A single laugh echoed, sharp and cold, as she eyed the handmade science project wobbling on the table. Parents whispered. Students smirked. In the crowd, a quiet black boy stood frozen, his hands trembling around the model he'd built from scraps and late-night dreams. She waved him off like a mistake. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that in less than 10 minutes, every judge in that room would rise to their feet. Would you have stayed standing in his place or walked away? Tell us in the comments. Before we begin, hit subscribe. It's appreciated. Malik loved nothing more than taking things apart just to see how they worked. Old radios, broken toys, discarded wires from his uncle's shop. Every piece felt like a puzzle waiting for him to solve. At 12 years old, his small bedroom looked more like a workshop, cluttered with half-finished projects and the faint smell of solder. He wasn't the loudest kid in class, but his mind sparked with ideas bigger than anyone imagined. When the annual science fair was announced, Malik stayed up late for weeks, sketching designs on scraps of paper. He wanted something bold, something that proved what he could do without fancy equipment or a big budget. His mother, a nurse working double shifts, cheered him on even when exhaustion lined her face. Together they hunted for spare parts, hauling home pieces of metal and wire others had thrown away. The school, a polished suburban building where Malik was one of the few black students, buzzed with excitement. Parents funded expensive displays, some students hired tutors, and teachers whispered about who the real contenders were. Malik's name never came up. He noticed, but he kept working, tightening every screw with quiet determination. On the morning of the fair, he carried his project, a homemade renewable energy generator, through the school halls. Kids stared at the rough edges and uneven paint. Some snickered. He felt their eyes but kept walking, the weight of the device digging into his arms like a challenge. As he sat up in the crowded gym, he felt the room's judgment before a single word was spoken. Tables sparkled with glowing lights and sleek designs. His corner looked plain, almost forgotten, but Malik knew what his machine could do. What would you do if you walked into a room already sure you didn't belong? The gym filled with a steady hum of chatter as parents and judges made their rounds. Malik tightened the last bolt on his generator, the scrape of metal loud in the tense air. Across the aisle, polished displays flashed neon lights and sleek touchscreens. A group of students pointed at his table, their laughter quick and sharp, like little cuts he couldn't block. The teacher in charge, Mrs. Harlan, strolled over with a clipboard in hand and a practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. She paused when she saw Malik's project. Her gaze lingered on the rough wooden frame, the wires coiled like vines. "Interesting," she said flatly, her tone carrying the weight of a dismissal. She didn't lean in. She didn't ask questions. She simply moved on, already scribbling notes for the next contestant. Malik swallowed hard. He had expected nerves, but not this wall of indifference. He glanced at his mother in the crowd, her tired smile steady, urging him to stand tall. He thought of the nights spent hunched over the project while the rest of the world slept, of every spark that had burned his fingertips, of the vision that had kept him going. He refused to let a cold glance undo it all. As the first round of judging began, a faint sputter echoed from his machine. A single flicker of light danced across the small bulb attached to the generator. A couple of students turned to look, curiosity tugging at their smug expressions. Malik adjusted a switch and the flicker grew steady, powering a tiny fan that spun with a gentle whir. But Mrs. Harlan's voice cut through the small moment. "Please clear the aisle," she said, louder than necessary. "Some projects need space for real demonstrations." Her words carried like a verdict. The nearby parents chuckled under their breath. Malik's chest tightened, but he steadied his hands. He explained the process to the next judge who approached, a quiet man with keen eyes. The judge leaned closer, asking precise questions about voltage and output. For the first time that morning, someone was truly listening. Behind them, a sudden pop came from a neighboring table. A flashy experiment shorted out in a small puff of smoke. Gasps filled the room. Eyes darted toward Malik's corner, where his simple hand-built generator kept humming. The crowd's attention shifted, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Judges whispered among themselves, glancing at their score sheets. Mrs. Harlan's confident stride slowed as she noticed the gathering interest. Malik felt the air change, a quiet pull of respect replacing the earlier mockery. Still, he kept his focus, adjusting dials, answering questions with calm precision. Every steady spin of the fan seemed to challenge the room's earlier doubts, each rotation a quiet declaration that he belonged. The head judge stepped closer, eyes bright with intrigue. "Tell me again," he said, voice carrying across the gym, "how you built this from discarded parts?" For the first time that day, the gym fell into silence, not from ridicule, but from awe. Mrs. Harlan's footsteps echoed like sharp knocks as the final round began. She stood stiffly at the judges' table, arms crossed, eyes fixed on Malik's corner. The head judge motioned for the room to quiet, his voice carrying over the restless crowd. "Next presentation," he announced. "Malik Carter, renewable energy generator." Malik stepped forward, heart pounding against his ribs. Every whisper from earlier replayed in his mind, but he spoke with a calm he didn't know he had. He explained how he scavenged each part, how the motor transformed simple movement into steady power. He described the science with clarity that made even the most distracted parent lean in. The machine hummed, the tiny fan spinning without a single hiccup. Its light glowed warm and constant, a soft beacon in the tense gym. Judges leaned closer, asking questions, serious technical questions, while pens scratched rapidly across score sheets. Then came the teacher's voice, cutting through the silence like a blade. "Is this safe?" Mrs. Harlan asked, her tone dripping with doubt. "It looks improvised," the head judge shot her a glance. "It's brilliant," he replied, his words ringing with quiet authority. A clean, functioning generator built entirely from repurposed materials. This is ingenuity. A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. Parents craned their necks. Students who had laughed now stared, wide-eyed. Malik's mother pressed a hand to her mouth, pride shining through her tired eyes. Mrs. Harlan faltered, her clipboard lowering an inch. "But," she began, only to stop as the panel gathered in a quick, hushed discussion. Seconds stretched like hours. The gym held its breath. Malik felt the weight of every late night, every doubt, pressing against him. Finally, the head judge turned back to the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice rising with unmistakable conviction, "this year's winner of the Grand Science Award is Malik Carter." The words seemed to vibrate through the air. Cheers erupted. First a few claps, then a wave of applause that filled the gym like thunder. What do you think happens next? Does Malik simply walk away with a trophy, or does this moment change far more than his day? Share your prediction below. The applause swelled until it felt like the entire gym was vibrating. Malik stood frozen, the trophy placed gently into his hands as cameras flashed from every corner. His mother pushed through the crowd, tears shining as she wrapped him in a fierce hug. For a moment, the months of late nights and quiet doubt melted away, replaced by something stronger. Proof that his work, his ideas, were undeniable. Mrs. Harlan lingered near the judges' table, her once confident posture slipping into an awkward stillness. Parents who had barely noticed Malik earlier now stepped forward to congratulate him. A local reporter asked for a quote. The boy who had been invisible an hour ago now stood at the center of the room, the generator's steady hum echoing like a heartbeat. Yet Malik knew the victory wasn't just about a trophy. It was about the subtle barriers he had felt all year. The looks, the quick dismissals, the way people assumed a black kid from a modest home couldn't outthink the rest. Winning proved them wrong, but it also exposed how low their expectations had been in the first place. He met Mrs. Harlan's eyes across the room. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, a faint flush creeping across her cheeks. Maybe she'd remember this the next time she judged a student by the roughness of a project or the color of their skin. As the crowd thinned, Malik packed his generator with deliberate care. He wasn't angry. He was focused. Today was one science fair. Tomorrow could be something larger, a scholarship, an invention, a company that might change how people see both energy and the kids who dream of building it. This story isn't just Malik's. It belongs to every child ever doubted because of how they look or where they come from. How many bright ideas are overlooked because someone decides a mind can be measured by skin? What do you think? How many Maliks are out there waiting for someone to believe? Show some love with a like and subscribe to stay inspired.